Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on helping facilitate rooftop solar in your community. My name is Sarah Lee, and I am a Clean Energy Engagement Specialist at the University of Michigan's Graham Sustainability Institute. I help facilitate stakeholder engagement and organize webinars like this one in partnership with the State of Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, also known as EGLE, along with Dr. Sarah Mills, the manager of this EGLE collaboration at Graham. So for today's webinar, it's part of a series that we've developed on clean energy and energy management with the objective of providing local governments across the state with practical advice for taking action related to clean energy. We hope by highlighting the work that some Michigan communities are already undertaking with respect to energy efficiency and renewable energy, we can demystify it a bit for other local Michigan communities. So we want to show that these actions are possible and are happening in communities big and small from Southeast Michigan to the UP. So during today's webinar, you are able to ask questions. And please use this feature, which you can see on the GoToWebinar console. That's a hard word. As you can see on the screen, it's towards the bottom of the console that should be on the right side of your screen. We highly encourage you to submit questions as they occur to you throughout the webinar by entering them into this questions field. When you submit a question, they will only be visible to us, the organizers. So don't panic if you don't see questions populating, but also don't worry if you feel shy about asking a question because no one in the audience is going to see your question. So for today's webinar, I'm delighted to introduce Julie Roth. She is the Solarize Program Coordinator for Ann Arbor. And once she's finished her presentation on the Solarize program and rooftop solar, Sarah Mills will come in and weave in any questions you've submitted throughout the webinar and have a nice discussion with Julie. So without further ado, I'm going to pass control over to Julie here.
There we go. Okay, hello everybody. As Sarah said, thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the Graham Institute and EGLE for hosting this series. My name is Julie Roth, and I am the Solarize Program Coordinator at the Office of Sustainability and Innovations in Ann Arbor. And I'm going to be talking to you about the Solarize program that we've developed in Ann Arbor. So the agenda for this hour, I'm going to start out with a brief introduction of Ann Arbor's carbon neutrality plan and our goals around clean energy. I'm going to start a discussion about the Solarize program that we've developed in Ann Arbor to incentivize residential solar. And then I'm going to introduce you to a toolkit that we've developed. And this is being sort of shared today, and you'll be getting a link to it so that you can use some of the tools and best practices that we've developed in Ann Arbor if you wanted to adapt and reproduce a program in your own communities. So to start with, some of you may be aware that Ann Arbor has adopted some very robust carbon neutrality goals. About late 2019, the Ann Arbor City Council declared a climate emergency and directed the Office of Sustainability and Innovations to develop a plan to get to community-wide carbon neutrality by the year 2030. That's not municipal carbon neutrality, that's community-wide. And this plan was developed with massive stakeholder, massive stakeholder engagement, and it is called A20. You can see here that Ann Arbor has been making some gains over the past 20 years in carbon reductions community-wide, but not fast enough. As we know, the science tells us that we definitely need to be steepening that curve if we're going to get to neutral by 2030. And we know that 23% of our carbon emissions are from the residential sector, not including vehicle emissions. So that's residential sector, basically buildings. The big picture of the A20 plan has 7 overarching strategies, and they're listed here. The first one, in order to get to carbon neutral, we have to power our electrical grid with 100% renewable energy. Can't get to carbon neutrality without that. And so subcategories under that is basically building as much renewable energy as we can in our own footprint, which basically in Ann Arbor means solar. And it means putting solar on every surface that we can get it on, right? Homes, residential homes, commercial and industrial buildings, municipal facilities, landfill, hopefully community solar if we can access that at some point. Anything we can't build in our footprint, we need to procure on the market. And certainly a big portion of this is what can we save, because energy that we never use doesn't need to be produced clean or dirty. And then number 2 here is switching all of our appliances and vehicles from fossil fuels to clean energy. Not all of, but many of our appliances and vehicles from fossil fuel to clean energy, and improving energy efficiency, which I mentioned. The other goals are related to the miles we travel in our vehicles, the way we use, reuse, and dispose of materials, and enhancing the resilience of our people in place, because as we know, climate change is already affecting us. So the Solarize program that we've developed speaks to that first strategy in the A20 plan, which is powering our grid with 100% renewable energy, and it speaks to building. So what can we build here in our footprint? So the concept of Solarize is actually an idea that was rolled out under the Department of Energy during the Obama administration as a way to incentivize rooftop solar in communities via group buys and reduce the barriers to entry. This was initially piloted in Portland, Oregon, and it was, I read, when I was thinking about how we might do a Solarize in Ann Arbor, I read the maybe 40-something page guidebook on how to launch your own Solarize program based on Portland's pilot. And it was massive and it was very successful, but it also was pretty administration heavy. There were, a dozen stakeholders and startup funds and a big, community-wide, neighborhood by neighborhood outreach program, and an RFP, a request for proposal that was produced by the city and their partners to choose a installer to do a group buy for basically the entire community of Portland. And I read this and then I kind of curled up into a fetal position and thought, I don't have any of this bandwidth or resources or energy to try to reproduce what was done in Portland. It was impressive and somewhat intimidating. So, and this was right at the beginning, even as we were sort of wrestling with how do we develop a plan to get to carbon neutrality. So we were in the nascent stages, and knowing my own bandwidth and capacity, we decided to try something a little bit different. So I'm sorry, this is a very wordy slide, but essentially the Solarize model that we developed in Ann Arbor is a lot different than a traditional RFP or request for proposal model. In an RFP model, you have a body, a municipality or a nonprofit that is issuing a big RFP for a lot of solar and deciding the factors that they will choose the installer. It requires kind of, a legal advice in terms of the RFP. What we've done in Ann Arbor is more of a kind of community-based, grassroots, bottom-up kind of model, where instead of running a group buy, I am facilitating group buys within the community. So in this situation, we have a resident who is interested in going solar and is up for hosting, helping convene a group buy. And so that resident will choose an installer to work with, just as they would choose any kind of contractor for anything they do in their home. So they will get multiple bids and they will choose their installer for any number of reasons. People choose based on price, based on service, professionalism, the type of equipment used, the warranties offered, etc. So after that resident has chosen their installer, we have the installer agree to a tiered discount structure for a group buy based on the numbers of contracts signed. We'll go over that more in a bit. Then the resident does outreach into his or her community and network of contacts to come to an event for education. So he or she will reach out to neighbors and friends and Facebook contacts and community organizations they are a part of, congregations, next door, email list, and invite everybody to an event to learn about solar and learn about the group buy. At the event, we provide education. The installer is present and does a Q&A, and we give the group buy basically a 2-month window to learn about solar, get an estimate if you wish, get outside estimates to compare if you wish, and then decide whether you want to move forward. The project manager or coordinator, that would be me, I assist with outreach, event planning, installer coordination, and tracking after the event. As your program grows, you can have multiple participating installers with pre-negotiated discounts so that if somebody approaches the program and would like to convene a group buy, they have kind of selected installers who have agreed to the discount structure. So there are benefits to this model, which is why I wanted to bring it here. First off, very low barriers to get started with a pilot program. It's just easy. Low administrative costs. It can be run by a single person. And then as it grows, it can benefit many local and regional small business installers, as opposed to one very large installer that has the capacity to put in a massive amount of residential solar all at once. The other benefit is really that it is resident driven, and so the investment of residents in the program is high, and it sort of manifests residents as ambassadors of sorts to share with their neighbors and share with their friends their enthusiasm about solar and about green energy, and empowers them to be more than just a consumer of solar, but an advocate. So the way I like to think of it is, as we all know, if we are all from various municipalities who are on this call, we often have, to some degree, a limited outreach. We can do all of the advertising that we want through our normal channels, our town halls, our newsletters, our community outreach, but we'll often find ourselves at some point kind of reaching an echo chamber. We reach the same people over and over again. But with this model that we've developed, when you have multiple Solarize groups, you are counting on the host of these various groups to reach out into their networks. And certainly Angie, who is going to host a group, is going to know a completely different circle of people than the city can reach or that I know. And that way, the idea is to create sort of a Venn diagram of the whole region where based on individuals and where they live and who they know, outreach can happen to reach a whole bunch more people than we would be able to reach with just a city-led outreach. So, okay, so here is what the very first pilot Solarize looked like. This was, I piloted it, and so decided to approach my installer, and he agreed to it. And it was basically, I sent out a bunch of emails to all of my friends, put a bunch of Facebook posts up and some Nextdoor posts, and said, I'm going solar. My installer is going to offer a group buy. Come to my house and learn about it. And both my installer and I seriously believed that there would probably be about 3 or 4 people sitting around my dining room table, awkwardly trying not to make eye contact in some sort of weird Tupperware party sort of thing. And that is not what happened. There were 40 some people that showed up as interested. And this is obviously pre-COVID, late 2019. And from that one group buy, that one meeting with just a little bit of outreach, and like we like to say, the price of snacks that we provided, 12 new solar arrays went up. And this was stunning, given that an average year in Ann Arbor, the whole year, we'll see approximately 30 permits pulled for solar. So at that point, the thought was either I have very special friends and a very cool network of people, or maybe this is scalable and maybe we should try to scale it up and see what happened. So we decided to try it for a year. And 15 months later, we just hit 1 megawatt of new solar energy put up through the Solarize program in the Ann Arbor area, which is a lot in a year. That represents approximately 143 new installations in Ann Arbor and somewhat into the surrounding area. We invite anybody in Washtenaw County to participate in the Ann Arbor Solarize program. So some of the installs were in some of the townships surrounding Ann Arbor and some of the towns surrounding Ann Arbor, Ypsi and Saline. We've completed 8 group buys. We have 3 currently in process and several more that are coming up. We've managed to provide over $500,000 in savings on the upfront cost of solar to residents. And the meetings have averaged 44 people per meeting with 32 requests for estimates after sales and approximately half of those turning into actual sales. So the group buys are modest in size and we have worked with a good number, maybe 6 or 7, 8 different solar installers in the region. This is kind of a complicated slide, but the most important graph here is this one on the bottom that says permits per year, the blue on the lower left. And this shows that between the years 2014 and 2018, the average number of permits in Ann Arbor pulled for solar was approximately 30. In 2019, you'll see a spike, and that is because of the sunsetting of net metering in the DTE distribution area. So all of the folks that had been waiting on solar and thinking about solar got solar in 2019. Our pilot launched at the end of 2019 after net metering had sunsetted. So we were not in the net metering group. So that represents a section of that long bar in 2019. And then in 2020, the expectation is that it would drop considerably because everyone who was thinking about getting solar got it, net metering went away, the inflow outflow reimbursement for solar in the DTE area was significantly more of a barrier, and yet the number of solar permits significantly increased due to the Solarize program. So the feedback that we've had has been really, really positive. For the installers that are participating in the program, we are being told, oops, sorry about that. We are hearing back that the program has helped them stabilize their business because really we were launching right about this time last year after that first pilot, which was right at the shutdown of everything. And, you know, small businesses were pretty panicky. They have hired new jobs for their companies, engineers and salespeople and paid interns. There's often an initial skepticism from the installers about the degree of discounts that we ask for. But once they've done a group, they universally say, well, that was fantastic. And we actually did save a lot on soft costs instead of going from town to town and individual to individual, trying to find customers. Having these group buys just brought an influx of business that we didn't have to work very hard for, saving us money that we could actually pass on to our customers. The administrative help afterwards that I provide is useful because there's a big influx of customers all at once. And so that was some of the lessons learned we can talk about later. So installers, we have grown from an initial couple of installers to 13 that now participate with the Ann Arbor Solarize program. And the residents, what we hear is that the group provides a safe space full of peers to kind of investigate and hear about something that's complicated and new. The backing of the city, or it could be a nonprofit or a trusted partner, gives it some legitimacy, so they know they're not, just being kind of sold something. It helped them overcome inertia. They had been kind of maybe thinking about it or heard about it, and they were just found the process to be really easy. In the meetings, we talk about how solar works. We talk about the costs and payback time, the DTE payback structure and how that works. We let folks know about federal tax credits, which are 26%. That's been extended through this year and next year, and then will be sunsetting. So that's a big incentive to try to do something like this now. We talk about the Solarize discount structure, which I will tell you about. We talk about Michigan Saves and how to finance solar. If you are not yet familiar with Michigan Saves, you should be. This is a fantastic organization in Michigan that functions as a green bank, which offers, brings people together with low interest financing for energy efficiency upgrades, and that includes solar. So we talk about Michigan Saves, we talk about the greenhouse gas reductions, we talk a lot about batteries. There's been a lot more interest in storage, especially since the rate changes from net metering to inflow outflow, and how batteries can work as a backup, like a generator. In addition, during the Solarize meetings, because A20 has pretty robust goals, and I'm sort of virtually in people's living rooms, we, as we like to say, we stick in the peas and carrots as well as the sparkly solar, and we talk about energy efficiency and the importance of reducing how much energy you use and have tips about that. We talk about electrification of appliances, because as we clean up our grid, burning fossil fuels in our homes to heat them have significant, not just climate impacts, but health impacts in indoor air quality, gas stoves, etc. We've worked with HOAs, homeowner associations, and condo associations, because these folks often have rules that and extra hurdles. And we talk a lot about the average price per watt and what goes into pricing. We encourage folks to get estimates outside the group buy so that we can keep it competitive and keep the competition that drives prices low. And the installer is there to do a big sort of question and answer period and get to know folks. And then afterwards, if people want bids, they simply email me and we get them started. All of the installers that participate with Ann Arbor Solarize are installers that are participants or listed with Michigan Saves. So Michigan Saves, in addition to being a green bank for financing, keeps a list of contractors that have been pre-vetted. So they have looked at their licensure and insurance and made sure that they are reputable businesses. So the city of Ann Arbor doesn't vet beyond that, but we're transparent about using Michigan Saves installers. And these are the bulk buy discounts that most of the installers have agreed to, which is that if 3 new families move forward with solar, everyone gets 5% off their project. If 7 or more move forward, everyone gets 10% off their project. And if 10 or more move forward, everyone gets 15% off their project. And my goal is always to make groups big enough, meaning about 40 signups, that we can easily hit that 10, so that we're getting the highest discount from that installer, and also so people aren't worried about whether we're going to hit it or not. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you a toolkit that we have developed, because part of what Ann Arbor's A20 initiative really wants to do is not just decarbonize Ann Arbor, not just get us to carbon neutrality, because that's great, but it only is so useful in terms of the much bigger problem of climate change. What we would really like to do is create solutions that are scalable and shareable. So if there are legislative changes that we help to push for and enact, that they help all communities in Michigan and the region. If there are programs that we develop, that we can roll them out and share them. We can collaborate with other entities, such as the University of Michigan and other municipalities, on our efforts. And so this, in the name of that effort, is my attempt to share with all of you what we have developed. So I'm going to end my slideshow there, and then I'm going to come here and go there to my toolkit. So you will be getting a link to this toolkit for your personal use or your use in your communities. And the idea here is that, and this lives on a Google Drive and should be accessible to all of you. And the idea is that this makes it easy for you to kind of reproduce or conduct a pilot Solarize in your own community, learning some of the things that we've learned and using some of the tools that we've developed. So the toolkit has 4 folders here, you can see, and they are, the first one is just how to use the toolkit. The second one is the a pilot program, how you this is everything you need to launch your first little pilot group buy. The third one is growing your program, all the tools that you would need to expand it into beyond the pilot. And then we have a folder full of the data templates that we use that you can download and modify and adapt and use for yourself. So in using the Solarize Toolkit, we just have kind of a description of what Ann Arbor Solarize is, how it works, and the roles and responsibilities of each party involved, the project manager, the host of the group buys, installers, and so forth. And then in phase 1, the pilot program, we have 4 subfolders: an overview of the pilot program, outreach and meeting planning, so as you're gearing up to plan your first meeting, the tools for the actual meeting itself, and then post-meeting tools, basically tracking your participants and interest in the group buy. So in the pilot overview, I'm not going to go through all of this, but there's a description of what your goals are in your pilot. Throughout the toolkit, there are graphics, such as this one, that can show you kind of a list of to-do items to make sure that you're on track with what you need to be doing. We have a pilot timeline, so you can see what we do on week 0, weeks 1 through 3, where your host is obtaining multiple bids, week 4, selecting a date, and so forth. So that's just the pilot overview. Then in the outreach and meeting planning folder, here we have the first one is a step-by-step communication each week, what you should be doing leading up to the event. We have examples of flyers and social media postings that you or your hosts can use to invite folks to the event. We have a sample sign-up form where people can register for the event. We've developed an FAQ, which is a very comprehensive, frequently asked questions document that answers many questions about solar, rooftop solar in general, as well as the Solarize Group Buy program. So we send that out widely to registrants. And we also have documents here about how to onboard an installer. What do you say? How do you approach an installer about participating in the group buy? We have an infographic here for the installers that you can send out along with meeting with them, to sort of describing the program and enticing them to participate. Then during the meeting itself here in this folder, we have meeting tools. And this is pretty simple. We just have how the meeting is structured generally, which involves, open that, which involves a welcome from the host, talk about why they're going solar, why they chose the installer they chose, and why they decided to do a group buy, an educational presentation about solar, whether it's slides or an in-person talk by either the project manager like me or a third-party educator with no financial ties to the installer, just providing education. It could be a nonprofit or another solar organization. The installer is there to introduce themselves and do a Q&A, and then instructions in how to request an estimate. And then here I have a sample PowerPoint. This is just the PowerPoint that I've used most recently for our events. So you can take a look at that and download it. And then we've actually included a recording of one of our events, one of our Solarize group buys, so you can watch that. And then finally, in the last folder, this is the post-meeting tools. And this is probably, if the Solarize meeting itself is the heart of the program, this is kind of the guts. So this is something that we learned after a meeting, is that installers often need a little bit of help. It was one of the lessons we learned early on, is that they can be pretty overwhelmed by a sudden 35 requests for estimates. They're not used to operating in that way. And so it's very helpful for the project manager to assist. So here we have what we've developed as a tracker spreadsheet. And this also is available for you to download and adapt and modify and use for your own uses. So here we have, as bid requests come in, I will populate names here, and address and email and phone. As I populate this first tab under full list, the names show up under the second tab here. This is where the installer and the project manager communicate on a regular basis. So here we can see Jane Doe has an X here under received usage data, ready for estimate. Richard, we can say, just sent in his information to me. So info received 317. I can click the box here, and that will color code so that we can see readily how many people are waiting for an estimate, how many have site visits pending, how many, once an estimate has been sent, we can turn that row into that color. And then once a contract has been signed, we can turn it dark green. Then the third tab here, under energy savings information, we like to keep track of the kilowatt system sizes that have been sold, the savings to that customer once we know how many folks are moving forward, and if we hit that 15%. And then here in this H&I, those numbers get added up. So you can clearly see how many kilowatts of clean energy you are getting up and what your total savings have been. Go back. Here we go. So also in this folder, we have a video that just describes what I just said and sort of walks you through it in case you're not watching this webinar, and a feedback form that you can download and adapt, so that you can find out how you're doing and get suggestions for improvement. Then, just watching the time, yep, we're doing fine. Then in this third folder, we have phase 2. So basically, you've done your pilot program and it went great, and you too got 12 new solar arrays, and you think, okay, let's make this a little bit bigger. You got your feet wet. So in here we have just kind of an introduction about growing your program. We have a folder on expanded advertising and outreach. Some of the things that we've done, like yard signs, social media ads. We do power hours on a kind of biannual basis, bringing folks to learn about renewable energy, electrification, and efficiency, and talking about the program, inviting people to participate, and so forth. So that's all in there. Then we have a folder with installer recruitment This talks about how we recruit installers, how you vet installers to make sure that they are folks who, in our case, participate with Michigan Saves, and with your aim to recruit installers that you know are providing excellent customer service to your participants, and some more, and fact sheets about the program. And then finally, in this folder, we have a data tracking form, similar to the other form, but much simpler. This is just a place where we populate each of the Solarize events so we can add up over time how much solar energy we've accomplished through the program. And then the last folder in the toolkit is just where all the data templates that you've seen in other places live in case you want to download it. There is also an instruction guide here in written form and here in video form on how to download these, save them to your own computer, and then adapt them, change their name, and use them for yourself. So everything in the toolkit itself is view only, but there is instructions here on how to download everything that you see in the toolkit. So I think that is what I wanted to show you, and I did a good job exactly as I wanted, which was leaving a lot of time for questions because I could talk for hours and hours. So I'm going to, someone stop showing my screen. There we go. And is that it? Or am I, Sarah, have I stopped showing my screen?
You have, and you did a fantastic job on time. And it's a good thing that you saved questions because there's a bunch coming in. And so for folks, I just chatted out to you all the link to the toolkit. So if you want to peruse that and come up with more, specific questions about that, you have an opportunity. First of all, I just want to say, wow. I'm really excited about the list of resources that are in here and your willingness to share with other communities. So thanks. Kudos to you, Julie, for putting this all together.
Thank you so much.
In terms of the questions that we've gotten in so far, they're in kind of 3 big buckets. So people kind of know where I'm heading. Some are about like clarifications about rooftop solar overall. So we'll focus on the kind of easy ones to make sure that people understand kind of what this looks like. And you have a solar array on your roof, right?
I do.
So you can speak as a homeowner with solar panels. There are a bunch of questions about Ann Arbor's specific program. And so I want to make sure that we focus on that. And then there's some other questions about A20 that hopefully we'll have time for.
Okay.
So
bring it on.
Can you mentioned net metering briefly. There were 2 questions about this. One was, what is net metering? And then the other was somebody who said, we know that right now there's proposed that net metering is not favorable and that there's proposed legislation to alter it, but that right now, like that it's just not as lucrative. So can you talk a little bit about the payback period in Ann Arbor, knowing that that's going to be different in, based on solar resource, but also what utility you're in. So
absolutely,
what is net metering, and then kind of what the payback looks like in these systems in Ann Arbor?
That's a great question. I'm so glad that somebody asked it. So I can speak to what's happening in the DTE territory because that's my territory. And I know consumers has followed, and so they're like a year behind. So, but similar thing, I think identical thing has now happened in the consumers energy territory. And I don't know about all the other utilities in Michigan. I know there are many, but the term net metering, it refers to a payback system for the solar that you produce that is kind of a one-to-one. So when I put solar on my roof and it's a beautiful sunny June day and the sun is beaming down on my solar panels, I'm producing a ton of energy and I'm not using a lot of energy at that moment because my air conditioner isn't on yet. It's June, it's the middle of the day, I don't have any lights on. So I'm producing more than I'm using. When that happens, the excess energy that I'm producing flows into the grid, unless I have a battery. But assuming I don't have a battery, it flows into the grid. That's a grid tied system. And it essentially goes first to my house and then to my neighbors. which I love because it feels like sharing. So it flows into the neighbors, and then DTE under net metering will give me full credit for my overproduction. And then at nighttime, when I want to turn the lights on, I'm pulling from the grid, and I get full credit 1-to-1 at retail rate for my overproduction when I then need to pull from the grid. So that got changed, and DTE now has I would say that no one would argue with the characterization that it is pretty complicated, what they call inflow-outflow system for payback. And it's complicated enough that I have a hard time understanding it, but essentially what ends up happening is I'm getting paid well less than probably about half of retail rate for my overproduction, but then I'm buying back from the grid at full retail rate. And so this was approved through the MPSC and launched. That's why that net metering being sunsetted in 2019 had a big uptick in solar adoption. And now consumers has followed suit. This is contentious. It is for the environmental community, the solar industry. This is a very contentious issue that has, there's continued to be discussions and efforts to create something that is more favorable for solar users and solar industry, and produce more green energy, incentivize more green energy in our state. So, so the MPSC, I'm not all together up to everything that they're doing, but I know that they have commissioned like a true cost of solar kind of study, and there are efforts to come to a better agreement. In the meantime, this is what it is. And it changed essentially the payback time it takes for a system to pay itself off and then start paying you as a user, from somewhere around 9 years to probably closer to like 11 or 12 years. The proposed payback rate DTE proposed initially to the MPSC would have increased it to about 18 years, which would have essentially made it kind of not viable for most people. So we avoided that. I hope, did that answer it, Sarah? Do you think I covered that?
I think that was great. Okay. Another question is more generally, like, and this is just maybe rapid fire, yes, no, just rooftop or also ground mounted systems?
Rooftop, ground mounted systems, pergolas, carports, whatever you can come up with. The installers are excited to get creative, and it includes batteries by the installers, wrap those in as well. So,
and are those, that's great, because that answers another question about how batteries have been included within the different programs that you had in Ann Arbor. Are batteries subject to the discount as well?
Yes, in most of the installers. There are a couple, we work with the installers. There are 1 or 2 installers who feel like they're already just giving batteries without a lot of increased cost to their own cost and passing it on, so they're not including batteries, but most of the installers are including batteries, so it's just a discount on the whole cost of the system. Also worth knowing is that batteries, when installed with solar or after solar as part of a solar system, are also eligible for the 26% federal tax credit right now, and that federal tax credit was just expanded in December to 2021 and 2022, and then after that it drops to 22%, and then it's gone, so unless it gets extended. So there is a timeliness to all of this. We're trying to capitalize on the fact that the federal tax credit is really robust right now, and then we can bring people the group buy discount in addition, and really kind of reduce some of the barriers.
Great. Another question was about roof integrity, right? And that's something that, when does that come up? During the meetings? Is that when when the site visit happens? It's probably different for every house, right?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. It comes up a lot in our meetings, and people's concerns. So essentially, there's two questions that come up around roofing. One is, what if I need to replace my roof? And what if, I don't want to put a solar system on a roof that's going to be replaced in the next 5 years? And that is true. You do not. You want to do the roof replacement first if you only have 5 or 6 years left on your roof. But if your roof is newer, or you're going to do the roof replacement and then do solar, roof integrity is really not an issue in terms of anything, because first of all, an adequately installed system by a reputable installer is not going to harm your roof integrity. You will always want to work with an installer who warranties the roof work, and if any damage occurred or any problems occurred, that they would be responsible, and that's in their contract. And in fact, this was something I learned, I always kind of thought that the north face of the roof, where you tend to have more shade and get that kind of mossy kind of on your shingles, that was the part of the roof that degraded faster. And the fact is, actually, it's the southern and baking part of your roof that the shingles tend to degrade faster. So the solar panels will be on the most sunny part of your roof and tend to actually protect the shingles and extend the life of the shingles, which is kind of a bonus that I had not known and had not thought about. So they can be, rooftop solar can be installed on regular asphalt shingles, on metal roofs, which can actually be fantastic for rooftop solar. I think slate's hard. I think there are some that'll do it, but it's a little trickier. But pretty much any other roof usually can, the roofing material is not important.
Great. And you touched on this just a little bit, but in terms of, there's a contract that, each homeowner is going to have a contract with the installer. Do you know if they typically they'll include the warranty information, but do they typically include maintenance? Like who's responsible for maintenance, or how does that work?
Sure, and it's very individual with the different contractors. That's part of what will go into the host choosing a contractor, is sort of finding out what does their warranty look like, what does their service look like. For the most part, these systems are pretty maintenance free. The solar panels themselves, they have no moving parts. They just sit there and take in the sun. And there's a little bit of degradation over time, but it's very, very small, like 0.5% a year. So usually panels themselves are warranted for 25 years, but often they're still up and producing at 40 beyond. The inverter is more likely you're going to want to look carefully at the warranty on the inverter, because that does have a little bit more of a moving parts, and you want to make sure that it's warranted. And same thing with batteries. But service-wise, all of those things are individual installers have service contracts, have warranties, and that's part of what goes into choosing.
Great. Well, it sounds like a lot of this stuff is stuff that comes up in those initial meetings, right? The Tupperware party kind of meetings, which I love the way that you talked about that, because that was the first thing that came to my mind when I think about Solarize.
I would like to mention that we're very, very conscious of making sure that these meetings are informal, informational, fun, upbeat, and low pressure. I have zero interest in any kind of high pressure sales kind of vibe. It's just not me. And I wouldn't want to be an attendee in that situation. I wouldn't want to participate in it. So we're careful to make sure that these are fun, informational, peer-to-peer, and very low pressure. Just an opportunity, not a mandate. So
great. Goodness, where is our time going? All right. Rapid fire. This is about the nuts and bolts of the program. Okay. A couple comments about, thanks for reminding us all the great things that Michigan Saves does and the resources that are available. It's not just offering financing. Somebody tried to find their list of vetted contractors. Is that a special thing that you have, or is it kind of hidden? Do you know?
No, yeah, you go to the Michigan Saves website, and I can't remember the exact sequencing of how to click, but you go on maybe homeowner, and then it'll say find a contractor, and then you'll put in residential, I think, and your zip code, and then you'll put in what kind of contractor you're looking for. Are you looking for insulation? Are you looking for energy audits? Are you looking for PV photovoltaics is what it says. Then you click on that, and then it'll give you all of their vetted installers or contractors.
Excellent. I typically think of, Solarize as a neighborhood, but based on what you were saying, when you're, inviting your Facebook friends or your congregation, it's beyond, and you noted, I wanted to verify, it's beyond, your programs have reached beyond the city of Ann Arbor to other places within Washtenaw County or beyond that. Is that true?
Washtenaw. So yes, I'm glad you asked that. So when I initially envisioned the program, it was definitely very geographically compact, and the idea being a neighborhood coming together. And that was for multiple purposes. One was sort of community building in a neighborhood, and the second was so that the installer would actually see it as a group buy and be able to find savings in doing a geographically compact solar install. As it turns out, as we kind of grew the program, the installers thought Ann Arbor was geographically compact, not just neighborhoods. And in fact, the county was fairly geographically compact because these installers are used to driving to Traverse City for one meeting and driving to Milan for another meeting, and then Detroit. So to have everyone mostly in Washtenaw, or mostly in Ann Arbor, and then some in Washtenaw, that was a group buy to them. And so what we've done is centered the group buys around whatever the host wants to center them around. So it may be a HOA community and their friends. So we'll call it like the Forest Brook neighborhood and friends, because the wider the net that we can cast, the more likely we're going to have more people come, and the more likely we're going to grow it. We've also had people that attended a Solarize in a neighborhood, loved it, and said, I want to host a group for my neighborhood. Right. And so it populates. So we don't really, so it's both. It's community building, sort of sometimes within a neighborhood, but also within just a community of people. And but it's casting a wide net so that we can get as much solar up as possible.
You brought up another thing. You said HOA, which for those who might not be, that's homeowners association.
Yes.
There's
Yep.
two questions though that came up about that. One was, could a homeowners association organize a program? And it sounds like yes, but these tools that you have could be for other municipalities, cities, townships, counties, but they could also be used for nonprofits, homeowners association. This is publicly available.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, in next month, I'm going to be doing a similar thing and launching this toolkit with if you're not familiar with the GLREA, it's the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. Fantastic advocacy and trade group here in Michigan that I have been a member of and a fan of for some time. And they host My Solar Stories on Thursday evenings, where people can come and just watch individuals around the state talk about their solar system and what they've done. They are also hosting a clean energy kind of seminar series, kind of like this. And I am going to be doing the same thing there. And there, I'm guessing the target audience will be a lot of nonprofits and solar enthusiasts who could launch Solarize pilots as well.
Great. Oh goodness, more questions coming in. We should have organized this for 2 hours. Have you seen, related to homeowners associations, because I want to stay on that, have you run into any being restrictive? And related to that, there were also questions about running into issues with historic districts or proximity to the airport, anything that kind of, places where homeowners might have wanted it, but there was some reason that they couldn't.
That's great questions. I've never encountered the airport issue. We're not near the main airport. We have the Ann Arbor Airport, but I hadn't even thought about that. HOAs, homeowners associations, in most states in the US, there are laws that prevent an HOA from restricting a homeowner's access to being able to get solar on their roof. Michigan is not one of those states. That said, I think there may be some legislators looking at introducing that legislation that would disallow an HOA from restricting a resident from getting solar. In the meantime, we don't have that law. And so we need HOA boards to understand solar and why their residents want to put it up, and also understand and feel comfortable with it in order to support it on their buildings. So I meet with HOA boards and present to them. And there is a tie in here with the historic district, because the historic district in Ann Arbor has been fantastic and relatively progressive, I think, for a historic district, which by definition maybe doesn't sound progressive, at allowing and welcoming solar with some aesthetic considerations. So in the historic district, your solar, for example, your panels need to be all black. So none of the silver rims, right? And if they're on a front-facing street, because that's where the sun is, they must cover as much as possible most of the roof, so it's not a patchy kind of distribution. So there's certainly aesthetic considerations. The historic district guidelines are online, and I often tout them when I'm talking to HOAs, like, if the historic district can do it, you too can do it. So
this is probably the last question. I like to include in the webinar series, I like to sprinkle a dose of reality in here, because you've made this really exciting, but I'm wondering if there were any hiccups that you encountered along the way, but spin it not just like not end on a negative, like how did you overcome it? And like, so what advice would you give to the next community for, it might not be a walk in the park, but what can you do?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. So I think that the biggest hiccup that we encountered initially was capacity issue for the installers, because we're working with a lot of different small business installers who, even the medium or larger installers, are not used to getting 40 requests for estimates all at once. And so the first few groups that we did, there was the biggest complaint was turnaround time for customer communications from the installer, estimates, answering questions, things like that. And so that's what got us to create that tracker and create a system where actually post-meeting, I have a weekly meeting with the installer. We get on a 30-minute Zoom. We go through the entire tracker. I update the group every week. I say, hey group, things are going great. We're working through 33 estimates. Please be patient. If you haven't heard, maybe on this date, if you haven't heard anything, drop me a note, let me know where you are. So I'm making sure that we're not dropping and no one's getting lost kind of in the process. We also had some hiccups around permitting with COVID. So Ann Arbor has an expedited permitting system that was working very smoothly until COVID, when everyone went home and the system kind of got turned over. And so there was a slowdown in the permitting on the city's part. They also were not ready for 30 permits coming in all at once, when usually that's what comes in a year. But we've, those are the kinds of things that we've kind of worked through. We worked with the permitting department and the building department to sort of make sure that they know this program is going. We've met with them on a regular basis on how to streamline this. So those are two of the biggies.
Great. Well, thank you very much. There's a bunch of other questions that I'll try to pass along to you, Julie, and see if you've got answers. Also for things that are not necessarily about Solarize, but hopefully will be on future webinars. I know Sarah's going to pull out the hook. Just to say really quickly, there's questions about how to contact you and your email address. Sarah may well say this in closing, but the slides will go online. I know that you included that on one of your final slides, so I'm assuming that it's totally okay for people to reach out to you.
Absolutely.
With questions.
JROTH at a2gov.org. So, yep.
I'll put that in the type. I'll type that out for people in the chat as Sarah kind of wraps us up. But thank you again for being with us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Sarah. for this wonderful presentation and discussion. I'm going to try to share my screen. Sarah, you may have to give me that privilege. But while we're waiting for that, I just want to say if you need additional resources, want to see recordings of past webinars, please check out the michigan.gov/energy website. And if you go to the upper right-hand side, you can see the energy tab and go to communities. And then in addition to that, we have 3 more exciting webinars coming up on the intro to planning and zoning, as well as a deeper dive into utility scale solar and wind. So please check that out. And thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day.